My name is Avery. I'm a 62-year-old housewife. My husband, who I was married to for many years, passed away 2 years ago due to a sudden illness. Now, I live modestly, managing the inheritance my husband left me. I have 2 sons. Both are already married. But when my eldest son, Henry, got married, he and his wife offered to live with me. I said, "I appreciate your concern for me, but I'm still fit and fine on my own. I don't want to be a burden to you newlyweds." But Henry insisted, "I can't bear to leave you to die alone. I'm the eldest son. Let me take care of you. Don't worry about being a nuisance." And so, we ended up living together. Henry's wife, Rhea, is so young. She's 9 years younger than Henry, only 23. At first, I worried if such a young girl could handle being a wife, but she was the one Henry chose. I found no reason to object to their marriage, so I accepted it. When we decided to live together, I asked Henry, "Is Rhea okay with living with me? Won't a young girl like her dislike living with an old woman like me?" Henry reassured me, saying, "It's fine. Rhea is kind. She'll get along with you. Besides, having you around will help us with the housework." He was adamant about us living together. I couldn't find a reason to object after hearing that. Sure, I'm getting on in years, and it's too late to start worrying when something happens. Thinking that it'd be more reassuring than living alone, I gratefully accepted Henry's proposal. After we had been living together for a while, there was a time when I asked Rhea, "Sorry to ask, but could you bring in the laundry? I'm going out to get groceries for dinner." Up until then, I hadn't often asked her for anything, but that day I had unavoidable errands to run before shopping, so I decided to ask her. But then Rhea retorted, "Why do I have to do it? I'm busy right now. You should bring it. And before you go, shouldn't you—" She seemed busy playing a game on her smartphone. Even before that, she hadn't helped with any household chores, but I chose not to say anything out of consideration. However, seeing her just lying there, playing her game that day, I said a bit more firmly, "If it's just a game, you can play it later, right? Could you please help out a bit?" Rhea, looking annoyed, grumbled, "You're always nagging. Whoever's free should do the chores, right? You could bring it in before shopping. You're really annoying." And with a glare at me, she went to the balcony to bring in the laundry. I was taken aback by her rudeness, but I thought it wouldn't do any good to say anything more and upset her further, so I left the house as it was. After that day, Rhea began to harass me. Ignoring me became a daily occurrence. When she didn't like the food I cooked, she would say to Henry, "I can't eat this. Hey, let's go out and eat, just the 2 of us." And they would go out to eat, leaving me behind. Henry did try to consider my feelings, saying, "Think about Mom too. She went through all this trouble to cook." But when Rhea was in a bad mood, all he could do was say, "Sorry, Mom, we're going to eat out today," and follow Rhea's orders. Rhea never did any housework, no matter how much I asked. Instead, she said, "You're not working, right? Aren't you ashamed to rely on Henry for everything at your age? It's normal for you to do the chores, isn't it?" She acted as if it was completely natural for me to do all the housework. Rhea accused me of not working, but she wasn't working either, but she felt superior because she was supporting Henry, who was working. I hadn't told Rhea, but I wasn't unemployed. I had a little income from managing the apartment left to me by my husband. I also gave Henry living expenses, so I wasn't completely dependent on him. But Rhea seemed to think that because I wasn't working outside the home, I didn't have any income, so Henry was putting all the bills. Once, when I was cleaning, Rhea shouted at me, "Can't you clean a little quieter? That's noisy." I was just vacuuming normally, but Rhea was on the phone call and was complaining about me to the person on the other end, saying, "Hello, sorry about that. Yeah, it's Henry's mom. She's really noisy, isn't she? She should be able to do the housework quietly." At this point, even I was annoyed, and I told Henry about what had happened that day when he came home from work. "You know, I'm not saying you have to do everything, but Rhea, you've been absolutely no help with the housework." Not only that, but I got scolded just for vacuuming. It's normal to share chores, and of course I do my part, but I can't handle doing everything alone, especially when I get complaints, I told her. Henry replied, "I'm sorry. I really am. I don't think Rhea means any harm. Maybe she was just in a bad mood today. I'll tell her to help out a bit more, so please cut her some slack today." but he didn't really take the matter seriously. Even so, I hoped that Henry would talk to Rhea, and I decided to watch how things unfolded without saying anything. Half a year passed. Rhea's attitude hadn't changed at all, and she didn't even pretend to do housework. I was completely exhausted from doing all the chores for 3 people and being considerate of Rhea. At that time, my second son, Lucas, happened to say, "Mom, your birthday's coming up, right? Since your eldest son and his wife will probably celebrate it on the day, let us celebrate it for you today. Renly also has a present for you, so why don't we go out for dinner?" I was invited. Lucas and his wife live in an apartment about 30 minutes away from our house. We didn't get to see each other often, but Renly, Lucas's wife, was kind and gentle, and she cared for me a lot. I gladly accepted Lucas's invitation, saying, "I'd love to. Of course, I'll go." That night, after preparing dinner for Henry and Rhea, I went out to dinner with Lucas and his family. They had booked my favorite restaurant and gave me flowers and a bag as a birthday present. I hadn't had such a good time in a while, and I couldn't help but express my honest feelings, saying, "This is so healing. I haven't felt this happy in a long time." Hearing my words, Lucas asked, "Did something happen with Henry?" "When you say it's been a while since you've been happy, I get worried. Have you been going through a hard time?" Lately, I hadn't planned to complain, but I explained that I was doing all the housework because Rhea wouldn't do any, and that I had been yelled at for being noisy and had been spoken to harshly. Lucas, after exchanging glances with Renly, said, "Mom, you don't have to live with them if it's tough. You can live on the income from the stocks and apartment rents that Dad left behind, right? You're only living with them because Henry wanted to, right? But if you're being treated so badly by Rhea and Henry isn't helping you, you should just stop living with them. If it's hard for you to say it, I'll step in." Renly also said, "If you're lonely living alone, we can live together. I love you very much. Please don't hesitate." I was so happy I could cry. I thanked them for their words and decided to keep trying a little longer, knowing that I had allies. "Thank you, but I'll try a little harder. They're my precious family after all. I really want to get along with Rhea too," I said. When I came home that night, the dishes they had eaten from were still in the sink. With a sigh, I tried to clean up, but thought it's only natural for me to do this because I always do it. Let's leave it as it is today, and let the 2 of them tidy up tomorrow morning. So, I left the dishes as they were and went to bed. The next morning, as I was preparing breakfast, Rhea got out. I said to her while cooking, "Good morning, Rhea. I'll prepare breakfast. Could you wash the dishes you used yesterday?" However, Rhea ignored my words and started fiddling with her smartphone as she sat down on the couch. Even I couldn't hold back my irritation at Rhea's attitude, so I raised my voice. "It's common courtesy to wash your own dishes." Then Rhea replied in her usual manner, "I've said it 1,000,000 times. Isn't that your job, mom-in-law? You know the saying, 'He who does not work, neither shall he eat.' You eat every day, so you have to do the housework." Upon hearing our exchange, Henry hurriedly shut up and asked, "What's happening this early in the morning? Are you two arguing?" He looked at me with a puzzled face. I told Henry with a sigh, "I only asked Rhea to wash the dishes you guys ate with yesterday. I just said what's obvious." Hearing my reply, Henry said, "What the hell? This early in the morning?" and tried to go watch his face, seemingly annoyed. But I couldn't contain myself and snapped, "It's not about that. Every single day I do all the housework, all of it, including yours. Do you understand how hard that is? At least you could wash your own dishes." Hearing me, who rarely gets angry, shout like that, Henry hurriedly said, "Sorry, I'll wash them," and tried to start doing the dishes. But Rhea said, "Why? Why does Henry, who works outside, have to do that? You're relying on Henry, so it's your job, mom-in-law." She stopped Henry's hands, seemingly unsatisfied with him washing dishes. Then she said to me, "You're a poor god of poverty, living on a pension, really a nuisance. Get out of this apartment, Rhea and Henry." I had reached my breaking point. "Why do I have to leave my own house? The name on this house is mine, isn't it?" I told Rhea. And to Henry, I confessed my true feelings. "Rhea seems to be misunderstanding something, but you understand, don't you, Henry? The ones who need to leave are you too. I can't stand living together anymore. I've reached my limit. Raya, unable to hide her surprise, asked, "What do you mean? How can a jobless mother-in-law rent a house? Aren't you relying on Henry?" I explained to her, "I'm the landlord of this apartment. I'm not renting. This apartment itself is mine. Surely I wasn't working outside, but Henry's father left me stocks, apartments, and land when he passed away. I manage those stocks, apartments, and land and earn enough income to live on my own. I've never relied on Henry financially. Even after we started living together, I pay for most of the utilities and food costs." Raya was speechless, then turned to Henry and said, "So, we've been living without spending much money?" Henry just nodded silently in response to her words. I added, "Henry might have wanted to show off to you, Raya, but there's no way he could take care of all aspects of my life and take you out to eat, go shopping, and so on. Henry himself isn't earning that much." Yet at that point, Raya seemed to realize the gravity of his situation. She changed her attitude, her face pale, and said, "I'm sorry, mother-in-law. I didn't know anything, and I've been saying rude things. Please forgive me. If our living together ends, Raya won't be able to live the way she has been." She realized this and kept repeating, "I'm sorry," in a flustered manner. Understanding the situation, they repeatedly apologized in a flustered manner. I told them, "I'm not saying I won't forgive you. We're family after all. But living together is out of the question. We need to resolve this. You two should rent a house and live there by yourselves." Henry reacted to my words with desperation. "I'd worry if something happened to you, Mom. From now on, Raya and I will help with housework. I just don't want to leave you alone." However, I reassured him, "I'll be fine. If you're that worried, I'll live with Lucas and his family. They offered to live with me when we went out for dinner recently. If I was anxious about living alone, I initially told them I'd try a little longer living with you two, but now I realize it's impossible. It may be a bother to Lucas, but I'm going to stay close to them." Henry seemed to understand my firm stance, responding with a murmur, "I understand," and said nothing more. Raya, on the other hand, spat out, "So you're abandoning us despite the fact that we've been taking care of you." Her tone suggested I was at fault. I realized there was no point in arguing with her and didn't say anything more. Within a month from that day, Henry and Raya found a place and moved out. Due to the cost of rent, it seemed they could only afford a fairly old and small apartment. Raya, who had never worked before, apparently started a part-time job to support their living. Henry informed me that Raya was constantly complaining about juggling housework and her job. Their life seemed to be filled with non-stop arguments, and Henry seemed completely worn out. Henry kept contacting me saying, "If only you'd forgive us. We'd like to live together again." But I had no intention of going through that again. After Henry and the others left, I moved in with Lucas and his family. After some time, even though I told them there was no need to push themselves, Lucas said, "It actually helps us a lot to live with you, Mom. Rena really wants to live with you too. She wants to learn how to cook like you do." And so, we decided to live together. Since we started living together, they have told me, "It's okay to say if there's something you don't like. Okay, we'll do what we can when it comes to housework, making sure we don't inconvenience each other." I spend my days cooking with Rena, enjoying my hobbies, just having a fulfilling time. Right now, I am very happy. From now on, I want to live in a way that doesn't destroy this happiness.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me and began to speak. "There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only." Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. "I'm leaving." After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick, is something wrong?" Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, "I'm very sorry." Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. "What is that idiot doing?" "All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next." Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. "If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you." I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? "I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hope to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.